In this Vex for Life video, I want to talk about whether Crimson Desert is actually overhyped or not. I know, I can't believe I just said that. This game is at an all-time high for hype. There are tons of videos coming out from content creators. There are new gameplay footage being revealed. We're just under a month now from the release of the game, and honestly, all the videos I have made from this game on my channel have probably overperformed our average or exceedingly overperformed our average. So I know there's a lot of people on this channel looking forward to this game. I absolutely am as well. But I do want to take a look at whether it might be overhyped or not. This is not to shit on the game or say anything bad about the game or anything like that. It's simply a conversation about whether this game can meet the expectations of its rabid fan base or it can't. So let's get into it. So firstly, this is a game that I have probably played 3 or 4 times now over the past 2 years. So I've definitely had probably more experience with this game than your average person out there. And I will say that I've never really felt that the game clicked for me in the time that I played it. I never had a moment where I was like, oh, this is what Crimson Desert is. This is so amazing. And that's not to say that the game is bad or anything like that, but I've never had that moment. I've never got to play long enough or a big enough slice of the game that I could go, oh, I get it. I finally get what the devs are trying to do with this game. That just never happened to me during my gameplay sessions, usually because they were very short or particularly because they were a very small slice of the game. They would be like a couple of boss fights or one quest or something like that, where you didn't really get the grand vision of the game and you didn't see all the pieces and parts of it come together. So this is a little bit anecdotal, but my first thought on this is just that it never clicked for me. So I can't say if it's going to click or not because it never did. If it had clicked in those times that I played, I'd be like, oh my god, I'd be like so hyped for this game, like way beyond what the average gamer out there is. But that moment never came for me, mostly because I never got to see enough of the game or play enough of the game at one time. And the next thing I'll say is that this game is technically labeled an action-adventure game, not an action RPG. This is from Pearl Abyss's own words. This is not me saying this. This is what they've said. So in my opinion, that language is probably being used to temper the expectations of the game. Anytime you look at the gameplay of Crimson Desert and you think about, an action RPG in this big open world, you get really, really excited. And so what exactly does that mean that it's an action adventure? How does that affect the game? And what exactly does that mean for customization? What does that mean for quests? There's some vague, maybe not completely understood things happening in there. And that language, in my opinion, is an attempt from Pearl Abyss to temper expectations maybe in those two departments, if not more. Most companies these days are trying to throw the RPG word into their marketing strategy because RPGs typically have lots of depth, they can be open world, they have build variety, and these are the sort of things that, RPG is generally viewed positively by the gaming community at large. So most companies are trying to market their games as RPGs, even sometimes when they're really not. And Pearl Abyss has done the exact opposite in this case, which indicates again to me that they're trying to lower the expectations of their fan base so that they don't get them so high that they're all disappointed. Now, the next thing that has me slightly concerned, that's not really a huge concern, but still makes you wonder, is just the amount of different things that you can do in this game. There's a crime system, you can cook, you can farm, you can craft, you can, build your base, you can fly all over the map, and, there are various mini games, there's so many different activities that you can do in Crimson Desert that it makes you believe that it's almost not real. If someone said this is a game, you'd be like, that's not a game, that's an MMO, or it's just not normal for a game to have that many different things that you can do in it. And one has to wonder, because of the amount and quantity of different activities available in Crimson Desert, what's the quality of those going to be? If you have to split up your development team to focus on each one of these activities, is it going to be as polished and fun as if you had maybe cut it in half or cut it into a third or even 3/4 of the amount of activities? And so I think you really need to sit down and look at can this game nail all those activities even if they're in the game? And how good do those activities need to be in order to make it more of a positive experience than a negative experience? If you take a look at something like Expedition 33, for example, which had a variety of different mini games, from the maze thing that you had to run up and get to the top without falling off, to the back and forth tennis match where you were shooting at each other. Not all of their activities were great. Not all of them made the game better. Some of them were frustrating. For the most part, it was fun overall. But I would say even in that game, not all their mini games were great. And what if you have, 10 times that or 5 times the amount of activities and only half of them are good, or a third of them are good, or 3/4 of them are good? Are you just going to ignore the other ones? And, if that's the case, will that be sufficient for you? You may just ignore specific activities and not do them and still get plenty out of the game. Or is it vitally important to do those activities because of some gear or something that you get, and now you're missing out on it unless you do something you don't really want to do? So those are definitely things that are kind of creeping up into my mind. Like, can they actually nail a large enough portion of all these activities to make it seem fun and worthwhile? The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is the combat of Crimson Desert. The combat of Crimson Desert is absolutely insane. It's probably the thing that I've had the most exposure to in my game time with the game. There are so many different things you can do, and I've said it in previous videos, that the skill ceiling for Crimson Desert's combat is exceptionally high. The amount of things that you can possibly do in combat is so high. I think the average player probably won't even come close to doing the things that, the skilled players, the elite players, the speedrunners or whatever can do in this game. The ones that really dedicate like thousands of hours to this game, they'll be able to do absolutely incredible things. But what I worry about from what I've played so far is if the skill floor is too high as well. It's going to be probably higher than most games from what I have seen so far. There are a lot of buttons to remember and combinations of things to do. And obviously, in my time with the game that I played, these slices, I was thrown into the deep end really quick in order to, maximize what I could see in the amount of time that I had. And I'm sure the game will do a much better job of easing you into a lot of these mechanics. So I think the full version of this game will be markedly different than my experience in that regard. But there are still a lot of different moves to remember. It's kind of like, it reminds me of like remembering the moves of, a character in a fighting game, but instead of learning the moves of one character, you're learning the moves of like 4 at the same time. There are that many moves, and that is a lot. Like usually in a game like that, you're learning one character, and then you move to the next, and then you move to the next or whatever. They're kind of all on this one character in this game. So I wonder if your average player is going to get frustrated by that skill floor being a bit higher than your typical action game or action RPG game, or if it will be eased in enough that players can reach that skill floor easy enough and, find their way creeping up to that skill ceiling. And I think another thing about these types of games, the Crimson Deserts, they're games that don't come around very often. You're not going to see very many games like Crimson Desert. Games that I think are in a similar category to this are like Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring. In terms of the hype, Witcher 3, these are the sort of games that are hyped to the same level. I'm not saying it's the same quality as this game because we don't know that yet. That's an unknown. But the hype levels are very similar, I think, to those sorts of games because this size of a game with this much activities and things to do, and it just doesn't come out every year. This is like a once every 4 years, once every 5 years type game. So there's a lot of hype around that. And, content creators are out there hyping the hell out of this game. And I have been absolutely guilty of this as well. I mean, this is a game that I'm super looking forward to. So it's hard not to be hyped for this game. I think, you should be hyped for this game. But what I'm wondering is just because the hype kind of feeds into its own hype, whether this game is overhyped or not. And when you think about it, like, what is this game actually going to have to receive, like, score-wise from critics in order to, like, meet the expectations of the players or surpass it? At this point, like, if you had to put a number in your head and you said, if Crimson Desert doesn't get at least this number, what's that number in your head? In my mind, I think Crimson Desert needs to get at least a 9 to meet expectations of players. I would say any lower than a 9, and it's going to be disappointing for people. There might be people out there that are expecting like a 9.1 or 9.2, and even a 9 might be disappointment for them. But I can almost guarantee you if the game got an 8.9, even being just 0.1 lower than 9, there would be a lot of disappointed people out there. And that's really insane to think. Like, that is such a high bar to live up to. Not that many games get 9 or higher generally. And, the reality is that the more content you have in a game, the more opportunity you have to mess it up. When you make an open world game, it's much harder to make a good open world game than it is to make like a small 2D Metroidvania game or something that's on a much smaller scale, because you can put a lot of time into something smaller and make it more polished. But when you start increasing the size and scale, maintaining that level of quality throughout it is very difficult to do. It reminds me of Code Vein 2 recently, which is a game that some people really liked, some people really didn't. I was kind of in the middle about it. I guess I was slightly negative about it, if I had to say myself. And it was a game where they got a lot of the open world aspects right, but they also got a lot of them wrong. And it ended up being disappointing for me. So I think when you have a game of this size and scope, it's so much easier to miss on those points than when you have a game that's on a smaller scale. And what's absolutely shocking to me to think that, this game's got to get like at least a 9 to meet expectations or better is that like Neo 3 recently, which I think is, the first game that came out this year that could be considered a Game of the Year contender. I don't think it will win Game of the Year this year. Obviously, there are so many amazing games coming out. Crimson Desert, one of them. But that game was absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion. And I think it has like an open critic score, Metacritic score of like 86 right now, or 8.6. That doesn't even get a 9. Like it's like almost a full half a point off of 9. And it was an incredibly good game. I mean, I had people message me going like, is it just me or is this game absolutely amazing? So think about that for a second, like where you have to be in order to get up to a 9. So all those things have just led me to the question, is this game overhyped? It's nothing negative against Crimson Desert. I think this game is going to do very well. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic game and sell well. But I'm just looking at it from, if everyone's expecting at least a 9, what if it's an 8.9? Are you going to be disappointed? And where would you put your money? If you had $100,000 to spend, and you could either bet $100,000 that it's going to be a 9.0 or higher, or $100,000 that'll be an 8.9 or lower, where would you put your money? That's my question for you. Honestly, if you were going to bet, not what you'd say out loud, but what would you actually do for your money? I think it's going to be very, very difficult for this game to average a 9 or higher across, critics and user review scores. But I'm really, really hoping that it does. Crimson Desert is one of those games that could be a genre-defining moment, or a very special game that lasts for years and years and could, even lead into more games that come out like it that inspire other games. And that's always absolutely a great thing when it happens. You can see the effect of that on Neo. You can see the effect of that on Code Vein 2 from, how popular Elden Ring was. And I hope that Crimson Desert reaches that level where it's so good, it's inspiring other games to do things that it's done really well similarly. But I don't know if it's going to get there. If I had to bet my money, man, it would be hard to get a 9 or higher. Am I off in my expectation? Do you think that my expectations are too high, or are they not high enough? What do you guys think? Am I insane here? Let me know in the comments below.